Welcome to Intro to Adobe Premiere. Normally this is a tutorial that we sell on fstoppers.com, but thanks to two sponsors, Artgrid and Artlist, this tutorial is coming to you 100% for free. We're gonna talk more about these sponsors later on in this video, but if you're looking for stock music, sound effects, or video clips, they're a great option. If you're still interested in purchasing this tutorial, the benefit is that you'll get all of the working files that I use in this tutorial, and you can work right alongside me with the exact same video clips and audio clips. You can go to the link in the description and use the discount code YouTube to save some money, but of course you don't have to spend any money at all. You could just watch this tutorial and learn how to use Adobe Premiere, and if you happen to have any video files, you could follow along with those. Hey guys, I'm Lee Morris. Welcome to Intro to Premiere. I know learning new software can be extremely daunting, but I am excited to tell you that learning to edit video is actually extremely simple. And although Premiere can be wildly complicated, the tools that you actually need to edit 99.9% of videos are extremely easy to understand and pick up. Let's go ahead and open up the software here, and you'll notice that when you downloaded this video, it came with a second folder called Working Files. Those are the files that we're actually going to be working with in Premiere, and if you'd like to follow along in Premiere on your own computer, feel free. So this is what Premiere looks like when you first open it up. We're going to go to New Project here, and I personally have saved the Working Files folder on our desktop. So I'm just going to navigate to the Working Files folder, and you can see the subfolders here with all of the different video files and stuff. I'm just going to select folder here, and we will title this Intro to Premiere and hit OK. So this is what Premiere looks like when you first open it up. And I know there's a bunch of different windows here, but don't worry, we're going to simplify everything. And if your Premiere doesn't look exactly like this, you can easily grab these windows and move them around and place them wherever you would like. And if a window is missing, all you have to do is go up here to Window, and then you can check or uncheck any of these specific windows. The first thing that we need to do is to get our working files into Premiere. We could go to File, Import down here, but what I like doing is I personally like clicking and dragging on things. So I'm just going to navigate to the folder called Working Files. You'll notice the 6 subfolders here. I'm just going to click all of these or highlight all of these like this, and then I'm going to drag them into Premiere. And you'll notice in the upper right here, it says Import Media to Start, and I'm just going to drop them right in here. All right, let's talk about the first sponsor, Artgrid. If you're just now getting into videography, you may not realize how important stock videography is. But if you've been in this industry for a while, you realize how difficult it can be to get clips of every single subject matter you need. Yes, of course, you might have the gear and the ability to film everything yourself, but do you have the time? Do you really have the time to spend an entire day working on a clip that you might only need 5 seconds for? That's where Artgrid comes in. And basically the way it works is you sign up for an entire year and you get unlimited video clips. Their pricing plan is just based on the quality of the footage that you're going to be downloading. For $300 a year, you can get HD footage. For $479, you can get 4K footage. And for $599 a year, you can get ProRes and log footage. Obviously, if you just need a couple of video clips, you should buy those individually elsewhere. But if you're like me and you need a ton of footage throughout the year, signing up for the entire year with Artgrid will save you a lot of money and make your life so much easier. Now, all that being said, I wouldn't suggest you spend any money right now. Just head over to artgrid.io and check out their 100% free trial. See if you like it before you buy. And because we dropped folders rather than the files themselves, Premiere is going to keep everything categorized for us in those exact same folders. So you'll notice here that we have the exact same folders, and we can click on this little arrow to open and close these folders. Premiere calls these bins. If you'd like to create a new bin, you can simply click on this button down here that looks like a folder for new bin. And if you'd like to rename them, you can just click on them and rename them whatever you'd like. For the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to leave everything the way it is. Now, the next thing we need to do is to create a sequence for the specific timeline that we're going to be working on. And think of it as a canvas that we're going to make a painting on. Now, there's a few different options that we have because we could be shooting in different resolutions. For instance, we could be shooting in 1080 with some footage, maybe other footage is shot in 4K. And then we also have an issue of frame rate. Some cameras shoot in 24 frames a second, 23.976 frames a second, 25 frames a second. The basic thing to keep in mind is that cinematic footage is close to around 24 frames a second. Anything faster than that usually starts to look a little bit cheaper, and it starts to look like a video camera. So some cameras do shoot at 30 frames a second, but if you want that cinematic look, I would highly suggest you shoot at 24 frames a second if you can, or 23.976 if that's the option that it gives you. Now, if we look into these bins here, let's look at the interview bin. If we drag this over, you can see that we're gonna have a lot of information about these clips here. And one thing that I really wish they would have close to the front is the video info. I'm gonna drag this and move it right next to the frame rate over here, so it keeps everything much easier to see and we don't have to drag this all the way out. Because basically the two most important things for me are the resolution and the frame rate. You can see that both of these two interview clips were taken at 23.976 frames per second, and they were shot in 4K, or 3840 by 2160. So what we want to do is create a sequence to work with these files with the exact same settings. The easiest way to do that is to simply grab one of these files and drag it down here. And you can see it says drop media here to create a sequence. So by dragging that clip into the sequence, we've created a sequence with the exact same settings as the clip. That's exactly what you want to do. And we'll talk about why in just a little bit. But before we get into that, let's talk about basically how this works. By clicking up here and dragging this little stick around, we're scrubbing through the footage itself. We can click the play button to play, or we can use the space bar to play and stop. As you can see right here, we've got some tools that we can click on, and 99% of the time, I am only using two tools. The tool we're on right now, which is the selection tool, and the razor tool. With the razor tool, we can cut aspects of this clip. Now we have two different clips, and then going back to the selection tool, we can grab and we can move this off to the side. So you can see I can put them in a different order. I can cut them up like this, and I can have as many clips as I want. I'm going to hit Control Z to undo that. We've got the original clip again, and I want to point out a few other things. Notice that there are different video tracks here, V1, V2, V3 going up, and there are audio tracks going down, A1, A2, A3. The basic idea here is that we're going to be stacking video footage on top of one another. For instance, Elijah is going to be doing an interview, and we don't want to just have his face while he's talking the entire time. We want him to be talking about something, and then we want to have B-roll on top of that. So we're gonna stack that on top. You'll notice if I grab another clip, for instance, interview 2 up here, I can drag it directly on top of interview 1. And if I do that, it's just going to eat interview 1. So you don't want to do that. You want to use those layers to your advantage. I'm going to undo this again by hitting Control Z. We can also use the history panel right here and see everything that we've done. And once again, I am going to drag interview 2, but this time I'm going to drag it on top. And here, if I place it here, what's going to happen is it's going to save both video clips, but it's going to overwrite our audio. So I want to make sure to put it up here. And then if I want to drop this down, I can just drag this and drop it down one. So right now I have interview 1 and interview 2 right on top of each other. And actually, this is the exact same interview taken with two cameras from two different angles. So when we film an interview with somebody, we usually have at least two cameras rolling. So let me show you how we can sync this footage up. First of all, if I put them all the way to the end, and let's play this and just see what it sounds like.
3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1.
So you can see it's out of sync. And Elijah is counting down 3, 2, 1, and he's clapping for a very specific reason. And that's because we know that we want to sync up these videos. And so he's clapping so that we have something to reference visually when his hands come together, and we have the sound of the clap as well that we can reference. So what I'm going to do here is zoom into this clip so I can see this more easily. And you can see here that here's his countdown, 3, 2, 1, and then this little spike is the clap. So I can keep zooming in, and I can move this pointer over and zoom in right here like that. And then I can try to sync this up perfectly. And I'll just move this over here and zoom in even further. And I'm going to get this as close as possible here. And that's about as close as we can get, so that should be perfect. And let's listen.
3, 2, 1.
So you can tell it's synced up, but it's not perfect. Now, there is a way that we can disconnect the audio from the video and we can start trying to sync it up a lot more precisely, but 99.9% of the time, you don't have to do that. What you need to do is just turn off one of the audio levels. Now, usually what happens in an interview is that you have one camera recording clean audio and the other camera recording really bad audio, but it's just used for syncing. In this case, we actually have clean audio on both tracks. But what I can do is disable the audio in the second video here in interview 2, and then we'll have clean audio coming through just the first channel. There's a few different ways that I can disable the audio. One way is I can simply hit the M button right here for mute track.
3, 2, 1.
So you can hear that sounds perfect now. It's muting that track. If I don't want to do that for whatever reason, I could also extend this just a little bit. Sometimes I like making these bigger so that I can see them a little bit more easily. And there's a bar right in the middle of this track, and I can drag it down. That's going to remove all of the audio from that track, and I can easily put it back. If I just want to add the audio back, I can just raise this back up to around 0 decibels. That's another way to do it. Or you can right click on it and go to audio gain and hit -96. -96 is as low as you can go, and you can see that removes all of the waveform. I personally don't like doing it that way because it does remove the waveform. So what I do, I'm just gonna undo that. I personally use the method of just lowering this all the way down like that. I think that's the easiest to deal with. So now let's watch this little snippet of an interview and figure out what we want to cut out of this thing. I can scrub around and I can look at the waveform, and it makes it really easy for me to figure out when Elias is talking, when he's not. I imagine when it's quiet right here, we're probably coaching Elias and telling him what to say. All right, so you're gonna look at Pat's camera and say, yeah, you're gonna look at Pat's camera, blah, 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 blah. So I can move over here and I can see, here's a big waveform over here. This is probably the good take. So let's go ahead and just cut here. So I hit C on the keyboard to cut, and I'm just going to cut this clip and cut this clip. And let's start listening. I'm gonna hit play with the space bar.
My name is Eli Locardi, and for the past 7 years, I've been traveling the world full time, seeking out the most beautiful destinations on the planet.
Awesome, so I hit stop right there, and I'm just going to cut and cut. Now I'm gonna grab the selection tool by clicking up here or clicking on the V button on the keyboard. I'm going to highlight this, and I'm just going to hit the delete key to delete that, and I'm going to highlight this over here and hit the delete key over here.
My name is Eli Locardi, and for the past 7 years, I've been traveling the world full time, seeking out the most beautiful destinations on the planet.
So right now, interview 2 is over the top of interview 1. So all we can see is interview 2, but audio 1 is the only thing that's playing, because remember, we have muted audio 2 down here. Now, if we want to see interview 1, the easiest way to do it, in my opinion, is to click on this, right click, and enable. I'm going to click this to disable. Now what this is going to do is disable the video and disable the audio. This makes it really easy to hide or reveal footage, but keep in mind, not only are we hiding and revealing the video, we're also hiding and revealing the audio as well. Right now the audio is set to 0, so it doesn't matter, but just keep that in mind. Now let's say that we wanted to start this video off with Elia looking right at the camera.
My name is Eli Locardi, and for the past 7 years, I've been traveling the world.
And then right here, maybe we wanted to cut back to the other camera. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the cut tool again, or the razor tool, and I'm going to cut right here. I'm going to go back, get the selection tool, click here, and I am going to enable it. So let's watch this now.
My name is Eli Locardi, and for the past 7 years, I've been traveling the world full time, seeking out the most beautiful destinations on the planet.
Awesome. We're editing video already, guys. Very, very simple. Now, right now, this video footage is kind of hovering in our timeline. It's not all the way to the left, and we have lots of space over to the right as well. We could highlight this, and we could just drag it over to the left if we wanted to. We can also right-click in this dead space over here, and we can click Ripple Delete. That's going to suck it up over to this edge over here.
My name is Eli Locardi, and for the past 7 years, I've been traveling the world full time, seeking out the most beautiful destinations on the planet.
Now, if you've got video tracks on top of other video tracks and you want to quickly see what's below it without enabling and disabling the videos above, you can click these little eyeballs, and they work very similarly to the mute button here on the audio tracks. So notice here on the timeline, right now the interview 2 is hiding the interview 1. I could just hit this little eyeball and anything in the V2 track here is going to be hidden just while this is off. Remember that it's still there, it's still on. I'm just turning it off so that I can't see it at the moment. Now let's say we made a little accident with our razor tool here and we accidentally cut the end off of our video. I'm just going to hit delete here to delete that, and let's watch this.
Beautiful destinations.
So we accidentally cut off the end of our video. There's a very simple fix here. All we have to do is highlight these clips, grab the end of it, and pull it back out. And let's watch again.
Destinations on the planet.
That's great, and it's a little bit too long here. Now I could get the razor tool once again and cut off this extra piece on the end, or I'm gonna undo that by Control Z. I can just highlight this and drag it back in. All right guys, so you're getting the basics of video editing here. It's really not complicated at all, but think about this. We have 4K footage in a 4K timeline. What do you think is going to happen if we add footage that's smaller than 4K? For instance, 1080 footage. It's a much smaller resolution. Let's go into this second folder up here, to other B-roll, and let's bring in the picture animation.move. Now there's two differences here. You'll notice that the frame rate is different. It's at 25 frames per second instead of 23.976. It's also 1920 by 1080, so it's not 4K resolution either. Let's drag this in and see what happens. I'm gonna just put this off to the side over here first of all, and let's watch this. So the first thing you'll notice is that it's way too small for our frame here, and that's because we're trying to fit 1080 footage in 4K footage, and 4 1080 screens can fit in a 4K screen. Now, there's an easy way to fix this. We can easily click on it, and then up here in our effects control, all we have to do is change the scale. So we can click on this and drag it to the right, or I know for a fact that all I have to do is bring it up to 200% and then it fits the frame. Now keep in mind, when you start stretching footage like this, you are going to be losing resolution. So the footage of Elia that was shot in 4K is going to be nice and sharp, but then this footage, even though we've scaled it to fit the 4K timeline, it's not going to look as sharp in the final export. Now let's talk about the frame rate issue. If you can remember, our interview footage is shot at 23.976 frames per second. This one's shot at 25 frames per second. Now, normally this would be something that I would worry about and I would change, and we're gonna talk about that in a second. But because this is such a quick moving animation, although we're getting some drop frames every now and again, it's not really noticeable with this footage specifically. But with other footage, it actually is pretty noticeable. So if you look at the next clip, it's Elia walking, and it was shot at 29.97 frames per second. If I drop this into our current timeline, it will be played back at 23.976 frames per second. Or if I right click on it and new sequence from clip, what this is going to do, it's going to create a new sequence, and you can see tabs down here. And you can see this is our actual sequence up here that was created. And here was our original sequence up here. So we can see that this one is 23.976 at 3840 by 2160. And then the second one here, you'll notice is also 4K, but the frame rate is different at 29.97 frames per second. Now, when I play this back on my computer, you're not gonna be able to tell that this is a different frame rate because we're actually exporting this video in 23.976 frames per second. But on your computer, you should be able to tell that there's a difference here. This will actually look smoother to the eye. So if we play this back and Elia walks into frame here, you'll notice that it looks a little bit different than the other footage that we've been looking at so far, and it's because it's shot at a faster frame rate here. Now, it is possible for me to grab this file and drag it into our first sequence that is 23.976 frames per second, and it will play back.
All right, you're good. Walk in.
And you may not be able to tell, but there's a little bit of jitter. Every now and again, there's just a little frame drop that's happening so that it can squeeze all of those frames into a slower frame rate. If we wanted to, what we can do is we can actually play this back at a slightly slower rate. It will use every frame exactly, and we'll get slight slow motion with this footage. We do this all the time. We purposefully shoot in a faster frame rate with the intention of slowing it down when we get into Premiere. So what I can do is I can right click on this, I can go to Modify, Interpret Footage, and I can tell Premiere to play this back at 23.976 frames per second. And what this is going to do is slow everything down by about 20%. Let's drop this in.
All right, you're good. Walk in.
Do I sound different? I'm a little deeper voice now. And you'll notice that when Elia walks in, it's just a little bit slower. It may not be noticeable to many people, but it just kind of has this dreamy look to it. So we do this all the time. We shoot in 30 frames a second, and then we export at around 24 frames per second to kind of have this dreamy look to our footage. Let's go ahead and cut right before Elia walks out here. I'm just gonna grab the cut tool. I hit the C button, click. I'm gonna click here and delete. So here's our clip. That looks awesome. And I'm gonna cut the end off of this like that and hit delete. Excellent. Okay, so let's take this to the next level here. You'll notice that the very next clip is gimbal.mp4 and it was shot at 59.94 frames per second. You can double click on it if you want to see the original clip, and you aren't going to be able to see a difference here on this video, but if you're watching this on your own computer, you're gonna be able to tell that this footage looks way different because it's shot with such a high frame rate. I'm going to click on the effects controls up here to bring that back. I'm gonna right click on this, modify, interpret footage, and we're going to assume the frame rate of 23.976 frames per second. Remember that I got this frame rate from the original footage, the interview footage that we used to create this sequence. If all of your footage is shot in 30 frames per second, then that's the frame rate that you're going to want to use. The basic idea here is that you want your resolution and your frame rate to be cohesive throughout your entire video that you're editing. So now I'm going to drag this in here, and let's watch it back. Okay, now you'll notice that obviously this is too small as well, and we know how to fix this. We can click on this and we can type in 200, and now it fills the 4K frame. So let's cut this down and find the best part of this clip. I'm probably gonna cut right here, and instead of using the razor tool, I'm just gonna drag the end over this way. Let's keep watching. That's probably good right there. Maybe a little bit earlier. Using the arrow keys, I can go frame by frame, right and left, and I'm just gonna drag the end of this over here. So here's what it looks like. Now, with these clips, we don't want the audio in there, right? And there's a few different ways that we can get rid of them that we've already talked about. I can also, you'll notice if I just try to click on the audio, it's gonna highlight both the audio and the video. I could click on this, right click, and then I could unlink. And what that allows me to do is click on either the audio or the video. Then what you could do is just click on the audio and delete it. That's definitely one way that I would do it. But if I undo that, another thing that you can do is you can hold the Alt button on your keyboard and just click the video or the audio. So right now, if I'm not holding Alt, you'll see it clicks both. But if I hold Alt, I can click the video or I can click the audio here, and then I can hit delete and just delete the audio out of there. Same thing goes for this clip of Elia walking. I definitely don't need the audio in this shot, so I'm just going to hold Alt, click down here, and hit delete. So let's start putting some of this footage together and make a little quick edit. I know this animation of Elia's work here. I want to keep this audio. Definitely a cool sound. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click down here and drag the audio down, and then I'm going to drag the video up because I want it to be on a layer where it's not going to overwrite what's below it or what's next to it. So then I'm just gonna move this over. And let's just watch and see what this looks like right here.
My name is Eli Locardi, and for the past 7 years, I've been traveling the world full time, seeking out the most beautiful destinations on the planet.
So I think probably what would be better is to move this towards the end, and then maybe we can grab one of these clips over here. Let's move this one up like this, and let's watch this.
My name is Eli Locardi, and for the past 7 years, I've been traveling the world full time, seeking out the most beautiful destinations on the planet.
Awesome. All right, so we're getting somewhere. We've created a little edit here. Let's talk now about the effects panel down here. Now there's certain things that you can do to your footage to, for instance, crossfade, or you could dip to white or dip to black, or you could fade the audio in or out. And there are manual ways to do it. And then there are preset effects that Premiere has already built for you that are easy drag and drop effects that you should definitely use before you try to manually build it. Now, if you know what you're looking for, you can just type in the name like cross dissolve, and you can see it came up right here. If you don't know the name and you just want to play with some of these effects, all you have to do is click these little arrows, and we'll click on like video effects, and you can see we can add tons and tons of different effects. So for instance, let's just say that we wanted to add a blur. We wouldn't want to do this, but let's just say we wanted to add a blur to this first clip of Alaya down here. I can drag the Gaussian blur on top of this Interview 1 clip. You'll notice that it showed up here in our effects control panel, and here's the blurriness number right here. So I can click and drag this to the right, and now Alaya is blurry. Now obviously we wouldn't want to watch this back blurry, but you get the basic idea. Now if we quickly want to see what the effect is doing, we can click the FX button right here to hide and reveal the effect very quickly. And if we decide that we just don't want it, we can click on Gaussian blur and hit the delete key, and it removes it from the clip entirely. Now, let's say that we wanted to do some sort of crossfade between this clip of Alaya shooting the pylons in Brooklyn to his animation here of all of his finished pictures. I'm going to drag this down just to make this a little bit easier to understand, and then I'm going to type in cross dissolve. And I'm going to drag the effect in between these two clips. And let's watch this back.
Seeking out the most beautiful destinations on the planet.
Now, I'm personally not a huge fan of cross dissolves. I don't use them very often, but in some cases, it is nice to be able to fade into different clips like that. Now, we can grab this effect and we can drag it out and make that effect longer if we want to. Let's say at the end of this animation, we want it to dip to black. There's a couple different ways we can do this. We actually could put a cross dissolve on it, and because there's nothing below it, this is going to work the same as a dip to black. So watch this. You can see it dips to black like that. I can click on this effect itself and hit delete to delete it. And I'm just going to type in down here, dip to black. And this effect comes up, and I'm going to drag this on the end down here. And let's watch that. Same idea. I can click on this and delete this as well. Now, a little bit later on, we're going to be talking about audio. We're going to add some music to this as well. And there are certain effects that we can do, like the fade effect that fades in and out of audio. I usually use the Exponential Fade. Let's just drop that on Alaya talking down here so you can hear what it sounds like.
Destinations on the...
So it fades his voice out. Obviously, I wouldn't do that on a person speaking, but you could do it on music very easily. Now let's say you wanted to do a picture-in-picture, very similar to what we're doing in Premiere right now with me in the corner of Premiere. What I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to copy this video clip down here of Alaya talking. Now what I'm going to do, because I don't want to copy the audio, is I'm going to hold Alt and I'm going to click on just the video here. I could hit Control-C to copy, or I could right-click and I can go up here to copy. So then I can move the timeline over to an area where I'm not going to destroy anything, and I could go up to Edit, Paste, or I could hit Control-V, and it's going to paste that. Now, what I need to do is I need to move the timeline back so that I can see everything, and I can zoom back out here so I can see it. And I'm gonna move this on top of everything here. And remember, it's totally synced up with the clip that's below it. So let's say that I wanna do a picture-in-picture in the upper right-hand corner. What I could do is I could scale this down, and then using the position here, I can move this over and I can move this up. Now I don't want the picture-in-picture throughout this entire video because that would be weird, like right here. It would be Alaya talking on top of Alaya. But maybe I want the picture-in-picture to begin right when the gimbal shot begins. What I can do here is I can zoom in so that I can see a little bit better. I can grab the end of this interview clip and I can just move it over so that it's even with this gimbal clip. So let's watch this.
My name is Eli Locardi, and for the past 7 years, I've been traveling the world full time, seeking out the most beautiful destinations on the planet.
Now, a lot of time when we're doing picture-in-picture, we actually crop in on the video. And I can show you how to crop in. It's actually an effect down here. So I'm gonna type in crop, and I'm gonna drop this crop right on top of interview 1 that's up here. And you'll notice that in the effects controls up here, it gives us the ability to crop this shot. And we can change the bottom, right, left, top, you get the idea. Let's say we want to crop in and get kind of close to Elias' face over here. I'm going to crop the left side just by moving this over. Really, really simple. Now, the only reason that you're really going to be doing this is if you're doing tutorials like we are, or if you are importing pictures into your video and you want to give your images a very specific aspect ratio, this is how you're going to do it. While I'm speaking about pictures, let's go ahead and give that a try. I'm going to go ahead and delete this picture in picture. We don't need that, so I'm just going to click it and hit delete. And you'll notice here in number 4 photo, we have a photo of the pylons that Eli actually took. And you'll notice that when I drop it in here, it's extremely small, and it's extremely small on the timeline, and I can zoom in to where I can see it more, but it's still really, really small. All I have to do is drag out the edge. And what this is doing is lengthening the amount of time that it's going to be shown in the timeline. So we can watch this back.
Past 7 years, I've been traveling the world full time, seeking out the most beautiful
All right, definitely not what we want, but let's move this to the end of this animation over here. And let's make it a little bigger. Now, if you were working on a professional video, you wouldn't want to scale an image this much. It's not going to be super high resolution, but for the sake of this tutorial, this is great. I'm just going to do a scale of 328. But you'll notice that the aspect ratio of this image does not match the aspect ratio of our 4K sequence. We can see the edges here. So if I play this,
time seeking out the most beautiful destination.
That doesn't look professional at all, right? So there's a few different things we could do here. One, we could just scale it more so that we don't even see the edges. And to be perfectly honest, if the image was large enough, I think that would be fine. Specifically, this shot was taken with a special Fuji camera, and we shot this for Fuji to show off this weird aspect ratio. So Fuji would not be happy with this. They want to see this interesting aspect ratio. So what can we do to hide the video that's below it? What we have to do is we have to add a black track or just black video in between the photo and the videos that are below it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to raise this up a level so that we have this blank area down here. And then I'm going to go to File, New, and we're going to click on Black Video right here. If you'd like to choose another color, you can just click on Color Matte, but for the sake of this video, we're just trying to come up with black video. This is the easiest way to do it. And we're going to hit OK, and it's just called Black Video right over here. I'm going to drag this and I'm going to place it right down here. Now, you'll notice that it's too small again, so all I have to do is click it and drag it out to match the clip that's above. Now, if I zoom in, you'll notice I don't think I made it. I didn't. I didn't make it all the way to the end. So I need to click here and drag it all the way to the end. I can zoom back out, and let's watch this.
My name is Eli Locardi, and for the past 7 years, I've been traveling the world full time, seeking out the most beautiful destinations on the planet.
Okay, so I'm really starting to like this, but now that we've added this photo, I feel like this animation is starting a little bit early. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to delete this cross dissolve that we've put on here, and I'm just going to push this over a little bit more. Let's watch this now.
The world full time, seeking out the most beautiful destinations on the planet.
Love that. I think that looks great. So I'm really liking the way this is turning out, but when it gets to this photo, it's just kind of weird that it's so stationary. Wouldn't it be nice if we could push in or zoom out or something with this image? And so now I think it's time to talk about keyframes. And this is the basic fundamentals of animating something with a computer. Don't worry, it doesn't have to be complicated at all. For this shot, we're just going to do a nice push in. And the basic premise is we're going to create keyframes, 2 keyframes, one at the beginning, and it says at this point, I want to be zoomed in this much, and then a keyframe later on sometime in time, and we're going to say, at this point, I want to be zoomed in more. And then as it moves from keyframe to keyframe, it's going to slowly zoom in. It's really easy. Trust me, watch this. So up here, you can see I can move this as well, and it's moving both of our timelines down here and up here. The one up here is only affecting whatever clip I happen to be on. So if I move this all the way to the end, you can see it's just to the end of this clip. And if I move it all the way to the left, it's all the way to the left of just this clip. We want to affect the image alone. So I'm going to click on this. And now if I click here, you can see it's moving just on top of this clip. I'm going to move all the way to the left. And let's say that this scale is perfect. I'm going to click on this toggle animation button. It's just a little stopwatch. And you'll notice that it made a little diamond shape over here. That's our first keyframe. Now over here, I'm just going to click somewhere kind of in the middle here. And I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. Maybe that much. And let's watch this. So I'm going to click over here and let's watch what this looks like.
Full time seeking out the most beautiful destination.
So that looks great. But at this point where this keyframe ends here, the motion ends. Watch again.
Seeking out the most beautiful destination.
That's kind of weird, right? We don't want it to just stop abruptly like that. So there's a couple things that we can do. One, we can click on this keyframe and just move it all the way to the end. So let's watch that.
Seeking out the most beautiful destinations on the.
So now the animation continues for the entire length of the clip. Or I can click on this, move it back, and I can right click and ease in. And what that's going to do is just ease into that final keyframe and make it a less abrupt stop. Let's watch this.
Seeking out the most beautiful destinations on the.
That looks much more professional. Okay, so that's starting to look great, and that's a very, very simple keyframe. We just basically changed the scale over time. Let's say instead we wanted to pan or zoom and like move around a shot. We could do that on a still image, or we could do it on video. Let's look again at this shot that we have on our timeline called Elia walking. This is Elia walking towards his camera here. And this was shot in 4K. And one of the benefits of shooting in 4K is that you have a lot of extra resolution to work with. Most people can't actually play back 4K. So this gives you the ability to zoom in a bunch. So what I'm going to do is click on this and let's take the scale up to 150%. So this zooms in a lot. And I'm gonna move this frame around to get a frame that I really like. And let's move back to the beginning of this. And let's say that we want to follow Elia as he walks out to the camera. I'm just gonna move this frame over here like this. And I'm going to click, instead of the toggle animation on scale, I'm going to click toggle animation under position here. And this is going to create a keyframe up here. Now I'm not at the very end of this clip, so I can grab this and drag it over to the beginning of the clip. So Elia is gonna walk in, and remember I'm just hitting spacebar here to play. And then he's gonna look through the camera right there. At that point, maybe I want the frame to be over here, like this. And we're gonna do the exact same thing that we did before. We're gonna click on this, interpolation, and ease in. Let's watch this. That looks awesome. And trying to get a real life movement like that with a camera is almost impossible unless you have some really professional stabilized video head. So it's a lot easier just to shoot stabilized footage and then move around the 4K frame in Premiere. All right, let's see what other clips we have here. I'm gonna go to 3 drone clips here. You can see we've got 4 drone clips. Each of these were shot at a different frame rate as well. And we purposefully do that because we like having that slightly slow motion effect on these drone clips as well. So I'm just gonna right click on these and I'm gonna go to Modify, Interpret Footage. Once again, 23.976 frames per second. We're just gonna go through each one of these one by one. Okay, so we've got all of these interpolated. Let's go ahead and highlight them all. I'm just clicking on the first one, holding Shift and clicking on the last one, and we will drag them into our main timeline here. Now remember, I'm zooming in and out like this. Now you'll notice that none of these clips have WAV files, and that's because this was being shot on the DJI Mavic, which does not have a microphone, so there's no audio at all. So we might as well hold the Alt button, drag over all of these audio clips because there's no audio there, and then just hit delete. Makes it a little bit easier to work with. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly watch all of these clips, and I'm just going to find the best parts of these clips really quickly. I'm going to stop there, cut, delete. That's pretty good. Cut, I'm going to delete that. So this is probably a good time for me to teach you what ripple delete is. You can right click in an empty space and click on ripple delete here, and that's just going to butt up the two clips right next to each other. You can also right click on a clip and go to ripple delete, and you'll see it butts up the next clip in line. I'm gonna hit Control Z to undo this. Let's find the best clip of this. All right, that's pretty good there. Now, instead of clicking on delete, I'm going to go to ripple delete so it keeps everything nice and tidy. Okay, that looks good. Oop. I'm going to right click here and ripple delete. Okay, click here, ripple delete. That's good. Ripple delete. And ripple delete. Okay, I think that's good. So now we've got 4 drone clips here that we can play with as well. All right, coming back over to our files, we have 5 time lapses. Let's see what we have in here. You'll notice that the frame rate is correct here and the resolution is correct as well. I'm gonna hold Shift, click on both of these, drag these both into our timeline as well. Same issue with the audio here. There's just no audio to be had, so I'm going to hold Alt, highlight this, and then hit delete. Let's watch these. Now, this time lapse was taken with a very special camera that, as you can see, has a weird aspect ratio as well. It's much more square. And you'll also notice at the beginning there was some flickering going on there. I'm probably going to cut past the flickering. And let's see what the second clip looks like. I think it's from the same spot, but later in the day. Again, the same weird aspect ratio. So let's talk about a couple things that we can do here. If I play this back, see that flickering? I'm going to cut right here and I'm just going to delete everything before that flickering. And then you'll notice that we've got a really long time lapse. Let's say we want that to go by a lot faster. There's a few different things that we can do here. I'm going to stop it right here, cut this, and delete this off the end. Now, I can right click on this and I can go to speed or duration. And let's say we want to play this back at 300% speed. Let's watch this back. I think that looks better. Now, depending on the speed of your computer, when you start pushing the speed of things like this, it may not be able to keep up and it may not be able to play it back smoothly. And there's something that you can do to fix that. You can go up here to Sequence, Render Into Out, and what this is going to do is it's going to render the entire work area. And basically you'll notice these colors above each of these clips, they're yellow right here. That means that they are not rendered. If they're green, it's rendered and it should play back smoothly. And if it's red, that usually means it's some sort of graphic intensive video or animation that may be difficult for your computer to play back. So you're going to want to render that. Now, if I just hit Render Into Out, what that's going to do is it's going to render this entire work area because I haven't set in or out points. We're going to talk about in and out points later a little bit more in detail, but basically what I can do is I can hit the I and O button on the keyboard. I'm going to set an in point here and then I'm going to click over here and set the out point. And then I can zoom in here and I can drag this over and say I just want to render this specific clip here. Now I can click Sequence, Render Into Out, and it's going to render this one clip here. And you should see this turn green. Now, no matter how slow your computer is, once it's rendered, it's going to be able to play it back very smoothly. Let's do the exact same thing for this clip over here. I'm going to Speed duration, and let's go for this one, let's go up to 500. Let's watch this. Okay, now the other thing that we have to deal with here is the aspect ratio. If I just zoom into this clip to get rid of these black bars on the side, you'll notice that I'm losing a lot of either the ground and this cool road down here or the sky. And I kind of hate to be losing that. So what if instead of panning from right to left, I tilt from up to down using our keyframes that we learned about just a second ago. So maybe I start down here. I'm going to move this all the way to the left. And I'm going to change the position here, set the keyframe and made a little diamond. And I'm going to move this over here. And let's say I want to end right up here. And I'm going to drag this all the way to the end of the clip. Let's watch this. Love that. I think that looks awesome. What if we want to do the opposite with this night shot here? What I can do is click here. I am going to zoom in, first of all, to get rid of these black bars. I'm going to start up top, hit the position keyframe, move over here, move it down, and then slide this all the way to the end. And let's watch this. Now keep in mind, now that we've changed the animation, it's no longer rendered. You'll notice it's not green anymore. So if your computer's struggling to play this back, you're gonna have to re-render it each time you change something. Okay, now let's quickly talk about color grading. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail here, but Premiere recently did an update that made everything so much easier. And if you have any understanding of how to edit a photo, this is gonna be so simple for you. What I'm gonna do is go up to Window up here, and I'm going to click on Lumetri Color. And you'll notice that it's right here, and we have a lot that we can scroll down and change here. And if I click here, you'll notice that I have all these different drop-down menus. We're gonna start with just basic correction here. And if you're familiar with Photoshop or Lightroom, this should look very familiar to you. Let's go back to the very first clip of Elias sitting in this chair here. Now this clip looks okay, but I think we can make it look a little bit better. First of all, it looks a little flat to me. So I'm gonna crush the blacks just a little bit, and then I'm gonna take down the shadows as well. I think the white level looks good. I can see that there's a lot of whites in the sky here, so I'm not gonna mess with the whites, but I will mess with the highlights just to give it a little bit more contrast. And let's bump up the saturation as well. Now, as I bump this up, you'll notice that the green is starting to look really good, but Elias' skin is starting to get a little bit too neon for me. There's a few different ways that we could tone this down. I personally like doing it with curves here. And down here, you'll notice this Hue Saturation Curves. I'm just gonna click on these to reveal these points here. I know that most skin tone, at least Caucasian skin tone, is right around here. And if I grab this and pull it down, you can see I can totally change Elias' skin. I'm not gonna go crazy with this, but I just wanna tone it down a little bit. I think that looks great. Now, for me to see what we've done, I'm just gonna double click these to make them smaller again. For me to see what I've done here, I can just check or uncheck each one of these things. So I could check this and uncheck this. You can see it's a lot more contrasty now. I think this looks much better. If I click on curves, you can see we're taking a little bit of saturation out of Elias' face and shirt. I think that looks a lot better. Now, if I go back over to the effects control, you'll notice that Lumetri Color has appeared here. If I want to delete what we just did, all I have to do is click on this and hit delete, and it removes that effect. I'm gonna click Control Z to undo that. And let's say that I want to copy and paste this exact effect onto the other clip. Remember that we shot with 2 cameras during this interview. I'm going to click on this, right click, copy, and then I'm gonna click back on my timeline. I'm gonna zoom in. And now remember, we're hiding the interview 2 clip completely right now, but just for argument's sake, just so I can show you how this works, I'm going to click these eyeballs of the videos above to hide them, and that reveals interview 2 below. And all I have to do is hit Control V to paste, and now you can see here's the exact same effect on this clip.
Seeking out the most beautiful.
Now I'd say on this clip, Elia's skin is just a little bit too overexposed. So what we can do is by clicking on Lumetri Color up here, we can fine tune the adjustments that we just made. So I'm gonna lower back down the highlights. I don't wanna mess with that. Maybe even what I'll do is lower the exposure just a little bit.
Destinations on the planet.
And I feel like that looks great. Now, keep in mind, we can still hear this picture animation video because I haven't muted the audio track down below. So even though we can't see it because the eyeball is checked, the mute button is not checked, so we can still hear it. I'm gonna turn all these back on for right now. Let's see if there are any other clips that I think could use some color grading. Now, the shot of Elia walking, I feel like this looks pretty good. I think this was shot with another camera in a vivid platform, so it looks pretty good right off the bat. I'm not gonna mess with that. This one shot here out of the DJI Mavic looks a little bit flat to me, so let's see if we can add some Lumetri Color to this. Make sure that you have this video clicked on. It's going to reveal all of these sliders in the Lumetri Color panel, and let's see what we can do here. If I just crush these blacks just a little bit, bring those shadows down a little bit. And let's see what saturation looks like here. And let's play this back. I think that looks great. Now, we could exaggerate the white balance as well by moving the temperature slider up here, so we could go really warm with it. I think that looks awesome. We could also go cool with it if we wanted it to feel like winter, and it kind of was winter when we were there. It was pretty miserably cold. But let's go warm with it. I think that looks really nice, and I love this lens flare on the left side of the frame here. It looks awesome. I think that looks great. This clip looks really good. Maybe I can add just a little bit of saturation to bring that blue out a little bit more. Let's see what the next clip looks like. Now this one looks a little flat to me, and I don't know that we're going to get that much color out of it because there wasn't much color to begin with, but we can add a little bit of saturation there, and maybe I can crush the blacks a little bit. Now, if you ever want to zoom in to see what you're working on, right here you'll notice it says fit. This is fitting to the size of this window, so if I move this around, you'll notice it gets bigger. I can zoom in here, so I can click 100%, and I can really see the buildings here. If I wanted to add, for instance, sharpening to this, this would be how you do it, and you could do this through Lumetri Color as well. I'm just going to hide this, and I'm going to go to Creative, and sliding down here you can see the Sharpen. And to be perfectly honest, this footage already looks pretty sharp, so maybe I just do a little bit of sharpening on it. That looks great. I'm going to go back to Fit here, and here's this last shot of Elia. To be perfectly honest, I feel like that looks great as it is. All right, let's add a little bit of music here, and then we can edit something to the music. The next sponsor is Artlist, which is a stock website for both sound effects and music, and videographers everywhere are always in need of fresh sounding music that also sounds professional. Yes, if you do searches online, you can find free, royalty-free music, and it sounds like it. You're going to have to spend some money if you want some quality music. Do not skimp out on this. It's going to make your footage look horrible if you have horrible sounding music in the background. Artlist is a yearly subscription to their entire catalog of both sound effects and music. If you're interested in just their sound effects, it's $149 a year. If you're interested in just the music, it's $199 a year. And if you're interested in both, it's $299 per year. Depending on the type of videos you make, you may not need that much stock video footage, but every single videographer I know needs a ton of high quality sounding music. Head over to artlist.io right now. You don't have to spend any money. You can check out their 100% free trial, see if you like it, see if the music sounds good to you, and then buy it if it's for you. The song is New Summits. I'm going to just drag this in here. Now, keep in mind that I want to put this down here, but see, this track is in the way and this is kind of too small to work with. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put it here, and then I'm going to slide this down so I have a little bit more room. Maybe what I need to do is make this whole timeline a little bigger so I can see better. I can also move this up so that I can see more of the audio and less of the video tracks. And I'm just gonna drag this and put this down here. So now we have audio. Let's listen to what this sounds like.
My name is Eli Locardi, and for the past 7 years, I've been traveling the world full time, seeking out the most beautiful destinations on the planet.
Okay, so one thing you'll notice is that the music's a little bit too loud for the beginning of this video. We're gonna have to tone that down a little bit. The other thing is that we probably want this beat to hit maybe at the end of this animation, right? And if we zoom in, we can see the beat's probably right around here. Let's listen. That's the beat, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in here and I'm gonna cut right at that beat. And I am just going to delete this out and I'm gonna move this over right there so that the beat lands right when this animation stops. Let's listen to this. Okay, so at this point I feel like that's pretty good, but obviously we want the music to extend to the beginning. So I'm just gonna grab the end of this and move this over. So we're missing the very beginning of this song, but it doesn't matter because it's just the intro to the song anyway, and we're gonna keep it really low while Elia's introducing this anyway.
My name is Eli Locardi, and for the past 7 years, I've been traveling the world full time, seeking out the most beautiful destinations on the planet.
Okay, I think that's perfect. Now let's start talking about keyframing the audio, because we want the audio to be low when Elia's talking, and then we want the audio to ramp up when he's not talking, and to try to keep everything pretty even, right? So at the beginning of this, what I'm going to do is click on the audio down here. I'm gonna go back to Effects Controls, and you'll notice right now it's at 0 decibels. That's like basically the loudest level. And because this song is already pretty quiet, I am just going to set this to -15. So that's gonna lower the music by 15 decibels. And you can see that it's created a keyframe just like the other keyframes that we did earlier. And we're gonna use these the exact same way that we did before. So let's listen to this.
My name is Eli Locardi, and for the past 7 years, I've been traveling.
Now, one thing I haven't mentioned to you guys yet is about this audio meter here on the right. I'm going to mute this song real quick, and let's just listen to Elia's voice and watch this meter.
My name is Eli Locardi, and for the past 7 years, I've been traveling the world.
Okay, so he's hitting around -6, which is okay. Broadcast might be around -12, so he might be a little bit loud. For what we do, putting stuff on YouTube, we try to get everything pretty close to 0. -3 to 0 is what we want things to be peaking at. We're actually gonna raise Elia's audio in a second with some tips that I'll show you. But for right now, just keep an eye on things. We don't want it blasting over 0. That's when it's gonna start clipping. And we don't want it, around -12. That's gonna be too quiet for the internet. So I'm gonna turn this back on and let's watch this again.
My name is Eli Locardi, and for the past 7 years, I've been traveling the world full time, seeking out the most beautiful destinations on the planet.
Okay, so as this animation happens with the pictures clicking through, nobody's talking, so I think it would be cool to ramp up the audio at that point. So right before Elia finishes talking, I'm going to click this keyframe button here. This is the Add Remove Keyframe button. And basically what I'm saying is, from the beginning of this keyframe that we made over here to this second keyframe, and you can zoom in if you're having a hard time seeing this. I'm gonna move this over just so we have a little bit more room to work. What you're basically saying is, from this keyframe to this keyframe, I want nothing to change. Both of them are set to -15. But then, once we get out here, I want it to be set back to 0. So basically from here to here, it's remaining -15, and then from here to here, it's going from 15 down to 0. Let's play this, and then just keep an eye on the levels right here.
My name is Eli Locardi, and for the past 7 years, I've been traveling the world full time, seeking out the most beautiful destinations on the planet.
Okay, so let's say now that we want to add in these other clips that we've got. So I'm just gonna grab these 2 clips of the drones, and then I'll drag in, maybe, we'll put Elia at the end. Maybe it'll just be drone shots. I'll just throw these in here. And then Elia can be walking at the end. Let's watch the entire thing really quickly.
My name is Eli Locardi, and for the past 7 years, I've been traveling the world full time, seeking out the most beautiful destinations on the planet.
Now's the time when I want to start editing with the beat of the music. So what I'm going to be doing with these final shots of the drones and Elia walking and stuff, I'm going to try to edit them to the bass drum or the snare drum. So I'm just gonna watch this back and I'm gonna listen. Maybe I'll cut right there. So I'm just going to hit ripple delete here. Let's watch the next one. And I'm gonna cut here, right click, ripple delete. Let's watch again. Ripple delete. Now I think I'm a little off right here, so let me show you what we can do. I'm gonna click and I'm gonna zoom in a lot, and we can actually see the beat like right here. So if I wanna move this by a frame, all I have to do is click here, move this over, and then drag this one over like that. And click and ripple delete. Okay, that looks awesome. So let's say you want to add some text. You can go crazy with text and make this really complicated, but Premiere has really made things very simple in the latest update. If you click the text tool here, all you have to do is click here on the frame itself, and what it's going to do is it's going to create a little text field. So I'm just going to write in Eli Locardi. And I can scroll down here and you'll notice in the effects control, here is our text. I can change the font here. Maybe I'll change it to Century Gothic. And oh, I got to make sure that I'm highlighted. So I'm going to hit Control A to highlight that. Go back here, Century Gothic. We'll go Century Gothic bold. If I wanted to, I could add a drop shadow like this. Now, if I want to make it larger, I can just change this number here by sliding this around. And you'll notice that seeing the actual text on the timeline is incredibly difficult because it's so small. It's like a single frame. See how small it is? So what you have to do is click and drag it out, just like you would any other frame or an image or something, and that just tells it how much time you want the text to be on the screen. So maybe we want, when Elia walks to the camera, boom, we want it to look like he's taking a picture of his name. This is a bad idea, but I'm just teaching you guys the basics of how to do this here. So let's move this down a little bit. I can use the selection tool here, and I can grab this and I can just move it down in front of the camera. And let's just play this back and see what this looks like. Okay, let's say we want it to fade in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a cross dissolve. And I'm just going to drag this onto the front here. And you'll notice that the text here extends past the end of the clip. So we have to decide what we want to happen at the end here. We could just grab the end and move it in like that. That's something we could do. Or if I want to drag the end here out, maybe what we want the text to do is move to the middle of the frame. So there's an easy way that we can do this. We're going to use the same keyframes that we did before. And what I'm going to do is right towards the end of the frame, maybe like right here, one frame before the very end of this shot, I am going to click on position here. And then I'm going to move a few frames forward just by using the arrow keys. And then right here, I'm going to move this to the center. So let's see, it could be something like that, and let's watch this. All right, I feel like it's kind of slow, it looks kind of cheap. So what I can do is move these keyframes closer together, and that's gonna make the same animation happen in a shorter amount of time, so it's gonna be quicker. So let's watch that. I think that looks pretty good. And then let's add like a blur to it or something to make it look a little bit more professional. So I'm just gonna type in blur down here in effects, and I'm gonna go to directional blur, and I'm gonna drop that right on this. And you'll notice once again in the effects control panel, the blur option is going to show up, and it shows up at the very bottom down here. Now, if I just add blur to this, it's just adding blur to the entire thing. But we don't want to do that. We want to add a keyframe of blur. We just want it to be blurry while it's moving. So I'm gonna undo this. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna move back to the beginning of this keyframe. And what you can do to jump between keyframes quickly is hit this little arrow button here. And this is gonna jump between keyframes. So I'm now set to this keyframe up above. I'm gonna slide down here, and I'm gonna set the blur length and the blur direction as 0, because right now it's not moving, right? And then I'm gonna just move forward frame by frame, and you can see this thing is moving. And right in the middle, I want it to be the most blurry, and I want the direction of the blur to be in the direction that it's moving. And then we're gonna keep tabbing over. I'm hitting the arrow keys. We're going frame by frame by frame. And then when it gets to the end, I want it to go back to blur length of 0. So let's just watch this real quick, frame by frame. You can see as it starts to move, it gets blurry, and then it gets sharp again. So I think that looks a little better. Now, I would say maybe I made it too blurry. So what I can do here is I can click to my keyframes, and this middle keyframe here that's set to 71, I'm just gonna change that to like 35. Now let's watch this. And you can see my computer's struggling to play it back, so I might have to render this. Can't do it. So what I can do is, remember, I'm going to set my in point by hitting the I and my out point by hitting the O key, and I'm going to go up to sequence, render into out. So I think that looks great. Now at the end of this video, I want the audio to go down. So what I can do is I can click down here, and maybe I want to cut the audio right here, and I'm just going to delete this. I'm going to use the fade effect, and I like the exponential fade. And I'm just going to drag, like, listen to this real quick. It's too quick. It fades out too quickly. So I'm just going to drag this over. And then maybe I want Eliah's name to fade out with the music. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a cross dissolve to the end of this text here. Okay, I feel like that looks awesome. Now let's talk about tweaking Eliah's audio just a little bit more before we actually export this video. I'm going to mute this music so you don't have to listen to it, and let's just listen to Eliah's voice.
My name is Eli Locardi, and for the past 7 years, I've been traveling.
So this already sounds pretty good. The levels are pretty high at around -6, but let's boost it just a little bit. Now, one thing that I could do, I could come down here and I could click on Compressor, and I could add on a multi-band compressor, and I can just drag this and put it on the audio itself. And just like everything else, it shows up in the control panel here. It's right down here. And if I click on Edit here, you can see that it gives us different options and drop downs. I personally like the broadcast sound. So let's listen to the difference here.
My name is Eli Locardi, and for the past 7 years, I've been traveling the world full time, seeking out the most beautiful destinations on the planet.
Now, you may notice that this makes his voice sound a little bit fuller. We can go into Edit here and we can push this up just a little bit. Let's say we want to go up a gain of 4 decibels, and let's listen again.
My name is Eli Locardi, and for the past 7 years...
And notice over here on our audio meter how much closer we are to 0.
I've been traveling the world full time, seeking out the most beautiful...
Now that's one way to do it, and that's the way that we used to do it. We used to go in and manually add the compressor to every single clip. But what we've done recently, we found a better way. I'm going to click on this and just hit delete, get rid of that. If you go up to Window and Audio Track Mixer, and then hit this little arrow up here for Show Hide Effects and Sends. It's a little confusing, I know, but it's actually much easier to deal with. This represents each of the audio tracks. So this is audio 1, which would be this one here. This represents audio 2, which would be this one down here. What we try to do is we always put our dialogue in audio track 1. And then what we can do is add effects here that affect all of the different audio tracks. So I can click here, go to amplitude and compression, and here we are again, multi-band compressor. Now, without doing anything, this will probably raise the volume. First of all, I'm going to click this little FX button to turn it off. Let's watch and see how high the volume hits.
My name is Eli Locardi, and for the past 7 years...
Right above -6, and then let's flip this on.
My name is Eli Locardi, and for the past 7 years, I've been traveling the world full time, seeking out the most...
So that sounds much better, and I think we're getting much closer to 0, which is where we want to be. Let's go ahead and cut on our music and listen one more time.
My name is Eli Locardi, and for the past 7 years, I've been traveling the world full time, seeking out the most beautiful destinations.
That's great. If you feel like it's just a little bit too loud, grab this and turn it down just a little bit. Go down maybe like 1 decibel. Now I just remembered that I forgot to put in our time lapses because they're way down here at the end of our sequence over here. So let's grab these and just slide these in here. And you can see how easy this is. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab over here and let's just move this over. We'll slide this one right here. And then I will slide this over like this. And we'll put this right here. Remember, I can right click here if I want and ripple delete to make it a little bit easier. Now, our music doesn't fit anymore, but that's easy. All we have to do is drag the end of this out. And the same effect is still there. Let's watch this back and see what it looks like.
My name is Eli Locardi, and for the past 7 years, I've been traveling the world full time, seeking out the most beautiful destinations on the planet.
Now, it's definitely messed up my beat of the music type editing. So let me go ahead and watch this again, and I'm just going to try to fix that. All right, guys, I feel like that's a pretty decent edit, and this was actually a relatively complicated edit. This is much more complicated than the average type of video editing that we do here at F-Stoppers, and most videos don't require this much finessing and keyframing and all this other stuff. So if you can do this, you can do 99.9% of video editing jobs. The final piece of the puzzle is exporting this footage, and all we have to do is go to File, Export, Media. And there's going to be a problem right off the bat here. You'll notice that the video that it's actually trying to export is only 3 seconds long, 3.13 seconds long. And that's because we still have these in and out points set. Remember when we set these to render this one little green area on the timeline? Now, what we need to do is spread this out so that it takes over the entire timeline. Now, if we go back to File, Export, Media, you can see it's going to export the entire 37-second video that we've just edited. Now, in this case, our timeline is squeaky clean. There's nothing to the right over here. So what we could do is we could go to Markers and Clear In and Out, and that's going to remove the in and out points altogether. And if we go to Export Premiere will export this correctly because at the very beginning of the timeline, it's going to start rendering, and then at the end of the last clip, it will stop rendering. But let's imagine that this clip right here, I'm just gonna hit Control-C to copy this, and I'm just gonna put it way over here. If that clip is over there, and you may forget about that clip being over there, remember we did earlier with the time-lapse footage, if you try to export this without any in and out points, it's going to render all of this black time in between this final clip here and this last clip here. So you're gonna have to have the in and out points if you're gonna keep a dirty timeline with other clips in here. Remember, it's very easy to do that. You just have to hit the I and O keys. At the beginning, I'm gonna hit I, and over here, I'm gonna hit O, and I'm just gonna drag this over to where it's lined up with the last clip. So let's go ahead and hit File, Export, Media. Now, there's a million export settings here in Premiere. I'm gonna tell you the ones that we do personally. If you wanna read about it and try to figure out which one might be better for you, go for it, but we do the same thing every time. We choose H.264 every single time. Match source high bit rate. Then down here, we can start changing some of these options. First of all, basic video settings, you'll notice this is the resolution. Because our sequence was 4K, 3840 by 2160, it's going to try to export this at 4K. Now, you may want to export this at 4K, but maybe you want to export it at 1080, 1920 by 1080 resolution. You can check this box here, and you can type in 1920, and you'll notice that the same 16:9 aspect ratio is kept because we have this selected there, and that's how you export at a different aspect ratio. Now, as we move down here, you'll notice that the bitrate settings comes up. This is the next most important thing. Let's first talk about constant bitrate. Constant bitrate is the amount of data written per second to recreate the video. If there is a lot of resolution, for instance 4K, there's more resolution, you need more bitrate to keep up with that. If there's a lot of motion going on, you're going to have more bitrate to keep up with all that motion. When we're working in Premiere and most of the screen is stationary, it doesn't require that much bitrate. Now, if we're just choosing a constant bitrate and we want to export this at 1080, 20 megabits per second might be enough. From what I've read online, it seems like YouTube plays back videos at less than 15 megabits per second. So we could just do 20 megabits per second. Now, if we come back up here and we say, well, we want to export this at 4K, now we might need some more resolution depending on where you're going to show this, and you know, it's up to you. I'm personally going to choose 40 megabits per second. Now, there's a couple other options here. You can do variable bitrate 1 pass and variable bitrate 2 pass. What these do is they change the bitrate. You can see it gives me the option for the target bitrate and the maximum bitrate. So what Premiere will do is when it's on me and I'm moving around a lot, it's going to use more data to capture that. But then when I'm in Premiere, in this video, I'm giving you an example that you're watching right now. When it gets to Premiere and the screen is mostly stationary, it's going to use a much lower bitrate. Now, if you do variable bitrate 2 pass, it's actually going to double check itself and it's going to make the file even smaller. So if you have a lot of time, go ahead and do the variable bitrate 2 pass. That'll probably give you the highest quality video with the smallest file size. But for the sake of this tutorial, I'm just going to do constant bitrate. Down here, you want to make sure that use maximum render quality is checked. I've run into some issues before where that's not checked and some weird things might happen. Now, there's a couple of ways that we can export this video. The easiest way is we can simply hit export. But before I hit export, I want to make sure that I rename this. So I'm going to click up here and I'm just going to call this Intro to Premiere Final Edit. So I can just click export and Premiere is going to start exporting this video. It really doesn't get any easier than that. Now I'm going to cancel this to show you the second way that you can export this. You can click down here on Q, and what that's going to do is it's going to open up Media Encoder, which is another program that Adobe gives you if you have Creative Cloud. And what this allows you to do is queue up different videos that you want to export. And this is great if you're exporting really long videos or if you're exporting a lot of different videos. And basically what you're going to do is queue up the videos while you're working on the computer, and then when you leave for the day, you can hit play and it's going to export all the videos at once. So you can see here I actually have 2 videos ready to export. This is one that I was messing with earlier today. It's called Test 2. I'm just going to right click on this and hit remove. And then this is the one that we just sent over. This is one that I stopped earlier. I can delete this one. I can also go to reset status. If I go to reset status, it's ready. If I hit the play button here, it's gonna render this one first, and then it will render this one second. And you can set up as many of these as you like. This is the fastest way to render out a lot of videos at once, so you don't have to sit at the computer and keep hitting export over and over and over again. So I'm going to hit remove on this top one here, and I'm gonna hit export on this one. The nice thing about using the media encoder is you can see down here, it actually gives you a little preview of how far along it is. I like watching that. It's a little bit nicer than just having to guess when you're exporting with Premiere itself. So that's it, guys. We did that relatively quickly, and I have to say that was a somewhat complicated edit. For this tutorial, I just wanted to cover the basics, and I wanted to answer 99.9% of everyone's questions. I could sit here for another year and go over every single menu, but to be perfectly honest, what we've just gone over is what I do day in and day out. If you've been nervous about creating your own video for the first time, it's time, guys. You definitely know enough. Get your own footage in Premiere and start editing that first video. All right, guys, that wraps up this tutorial. Big thanks to Artgrid and Artlist for sponsoring this video and making this paid tutorial free for you guys. If you enjoyed this tutorial, check out our other tutorials on fstoppers.com/store. See you next time.